We have brand new polling numbers for you today. A recent News Nation and Decision Desk HQ poll found that nearly 54% of voters disapprove of Joe Biden's handling of his role as president. Meanwhile, 60% of Republican voters think Trump should be the party's presidential nominee, while 84% of Dems do not want his name on the ballot at all. The poll also found that more than 47% of voters feel financially worse off than they were last year. Advisor at Decision Desk HQ, Scott Tranter, joins now to weigh in on these findings. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so I see these numbers, and I think it's confirming a lot of, what we already have a general sense of, that people are frustrated with the direction of the country, the economy in particular, and many Republicans still want Donald Trump, whereas for Democrats, that would be like a fate worse than death. What other, themes emerge from this kind of polling?
Well, I think the theme here is consistency. Since News Nation has been tracking this since February of this year, inflation, economy, gas prices, and as you see with this most recent one, 47% of Americans think that they're worse off financially. That seems to be the underlying consistent theme going back 6-8 months. And we've had a lot of other things we've been polling on, but these economic issues have been consistent, and now we're 30 days out from the election. And so I think that's going to be the biggest one motivating voters going into the fall. Not the only issue, but the biggest issue.
I want to get your sense of where things are headed given the fluctuations we've seen. Obviously for many months, the story was expecting a very favorable climate for Republicans, retaking the Senate perhaps, the House almost certainly. Then you had the Dobbs decision, maybe the economy improved somewhat, and I think the weaknesses of specific Republican candidates very recently in Georgia and then other places as well became more evident, and the situation got much brighter for Democrats. Is that holding true? Because now I've seen some polling suggest that the Republicans might have a better night now than they're expected to have. It goes so back and forth. And what are we supposed to do but prognosticate and wait until the night of? But where is your sense of things now?
Yeah, so no, if you would have asked all the quote unquote experts 6 months ago, they would have predicted a Republican House and a Republican Senate. Here we are less than 30 days or roughly 30 days out. And, Decision Desk HQ projects about a 76% chance Republicans take the House, but about a 65% chance the Democrats keep the Senate. That would be historically unprecedented in many cycles. Sure, it's happened before, but not any time recently where this has happened after a brand new president has been elected, where the House and Senate is split like that. So I think these things are, how do I put it? It's surprising now, and as you pointed out, the polling has looked better for Republicans, but voting has already started in places like North Carolina. It's about to start in Georgia and Florida, and the polling needs to get a little bit better in those places for the Republicans to actually come back and look favored in the Senate. This is a long way to say there's still a lot of voting to come. There's still a lot of voting to happen, and there's some more polling to happen, but we are getting down to the wire for some of these things to turn around.
Well, there are some more findings on key issues from that poll that I wanted to quickly get your reaction to. Roughly 65% of voters very concerned about inflation. 65% see it as a bigger problem facing the U.S. actually even than unemployment, COVID, or crime, which really does put in perspective that, it's the economy stupid, right? That's the old thinking, going back to the Clinton era, and it's borne out once again, right?
Yep. No, and that's been consistent. As long as News Nation's been tracking this pretty much all year, and inflation has been over 50%, which is relatively hard to get on issues, and certainly consistently. And if it makes sense, look, when gas prices go up the way they are, when hotel prices are up the way they are, when cars and homes and all those types of things, that affects people every day. Certainly more than some other issues. And these things haven't changed, and they look to their government. They look to their local officials. They look to the president. If the president stands up and says, I'm going to pass an Inflation Reduction Act, they look at him and say, okay, well, he's doing something, but am I seeing it at the gas pump? And so, these types of things are top of mind. And my guess is they're probably going to be a topic in 2024 cycle as well. I mean, these issues are pretty salient, and these people feel pretty strongly about it, both in the polling we see as well as the focus groups.
Well, the poll also found that about 35% think U.S. policies that incentivize illegal immigration over legal entry are the most responsible factors causing an increase in illegal immigration, and 26% believed that building a wall along the U.S. southern border would help the most to deter illegal immigration to the U.S. if it were put in place, which is not surprising, that Donald Trump really catapulted himself to the front of the pack in 2016 by standing out on the wall issue. That was, I know there are conservative pundits like Ann Coulter and other people got behind Trump because he was the one strongest on that very pivotal issue that resonated then with a very conservative base. So are we seeing that again, that a Republican figure would certainly distinguish themselves by concentrating specifically on the wall, which is it's an easy proposal. So one sentence proposal: we should build a wall on the southern border. It doesn't get into the more confusing or complicated aspects of our migration policy or our asylum policy or people overstaying their visas. Nope, just build a wall. It's not high enough. Build it a little higher. That's what Republicans should run on, I would take from looking at that poll. What say you?
Yeah, no, it's an easy message to sell, build that wall. And I think that 26%, it's probably a little bit lower than had we done it a couple of years ago. I should have looked at the polling ahead of time. But, that's pretty solid. 25-30% of the electorate, that's a pretty easy issue to go on. And I would imagine if we dug a little bit deeper and we asked those people, the 35% who said, okay, de-incentivize, it's not a build a wall and don't do the other. It's okay, well, let's do some of the poly stuff, but also build a wall, right? And so I think the wall issue is that's why you see Republicans, especially in some southern states or in some relatively competitive primaries in border states and things like that, say it, because there is a solid 25 to 30% of the electorate who is going to donate on that. They're going to be activists on that, and they're going to vote on that.
Do we have polling to indicate what the Democratic consensus position is on doing something about immigration? Because you hear so much in the media from people who are probably much further to the left in the Democratic coalition on immigration, I suspect, than your actual Democratic voters. Do we know where their sentiments lie on this issue?
Yeah, when there's some good public polling out by Pew and Gallup, the Democrats overwhelmingly, and it all depends on how you ask the question, between 60 and 70% think the immigration issue should be solved. And to be honest, if you ask Republicans and Democrats, more than 50% of them think it should be solved. Where they disagree is how it should be solved, right? It goes back to the 2008 attempt where it was path to citizenship. Is we're going to build a wall, we'll give them a path to citizenship that didn't exactly pass, but that had slight bipartisan support. But the reason why it was only slight is because people were like, well, let's build a wall first and then let's do the policy stuff. And some people were like, well, let's do the policy stuff and then the wall next. And so I think that's where it splits. Republicans and Democrats, both, the polling shows, both want to do it. They differ on how they want to get it done.
Right. It's another example of, more extreme voices getting in the way, where you could get, most people in the country, you could get them to support some kind of additional border security and then a process for making it easier for legal immigration. You'd have less illegal immigration. Everyone would be happy, only the extremes standing in the way of it. Scott, thank you so much for joining us today. We'll let you get out of the rain.
Thanks for having me.
We'll be back with more Rising in just a minute.